come sit down. Join us. My name's Anna Palmer. I'm the CEO and one of the founders of Punchbowl News. Thank you all so much for joining us this morning in person as well as on the live stream. We're going to have a very interesting conversation with Representative August Pfluger, the Republican from Texas. No shortage of news of the day to discuss. But we're also going to go deep on Spectrum 5G leadership and what he is seeing in Texas, particularly when it comes to, we were talking backstage about farming. So it's going to be a very interesting conversation. Afterwards, I'm going to be speaking with the president and CEO of CTIA, Meredith Atwell. Big thank you, as always, to CTIA for partnering with us and making this conversation possible. As always, you can find Punchbowl News at Punchbowl News on all social media, and we encourage you to share about this conversation this morning. And with that, I'm going to welcome the congressman to the stage, Mr. Pfluger. Yep, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we have a ton to get to, and I know it is a busy morning for House Republicans who are going to be meeting with the conference just about now. So we're going to start with a few news of the day questions, and then we're going to get into Spectrum, 5G, and more. But first things first, no surprise here. Government funding, 12 days it's going to run out. Are we headed to a government shutdown? I mean, use it with a question mark, not a period.
Some would phrase it the way you just phrased it, actually. First off, thank you for having me, and what a great opportunity to come talk about a lot of different things that are important. But I hope not. I think we do have a plan, and I think some of the work that was done over the weekend, obviously the work that's been done, I serve on Homeland Security, so we look at H.R. 2, which was a very, very good comprehensive border security plan as part of the CR right now, and looking at some of the funding levels. We are talking about this today. We'll be talking about it tomorrow. We're hoping to vote to keep the government funded for the next 30 days while we can continue to get after some of the concerns on our debt, our deficit, the spending levels that we see. So there's a lot of things going on right now, but it does seem like there is a small group of people who I'm not sure where they stand on, what is it that they want. We have some good ideas. The entire conference voted on the border security plan. The entire conference has put together Limit, Save, and Grow. When you bring these together, that's really what the CR is. A 7.5-8% cut on non-defense discretionary spending that's significant. So we're making some headway. I hope we can avoid a shutdown. And govern in a way that tells the American people we're serious about cutting our debt, and we're also serious about moving forward.
So we obviously are watching in real time the struggle that House Republicans are having to pass their package. But even if you get there in the next 12 days, that's a no-go in the Senate. It's a no-go with this White House. What is the pathway forward besides just this kind of first effort to try to get everybody on your team on the same page?
There's some muscle memory that I think needs to be developed in the House, which is we're not subordinate to the Senate. We have different parties. We're in divided government, obviously with the White House. So this is our answer. When it comes to what we are doing as representatives of the people with a very slim majority, we're going to speak with the Speaker's voice and send something over. And yes, I think if people think that that is the final answer and that the Senate controlled by Chuck Schumer and the White House controlled by President Joe Biden is going to just accept it, well, that's not reality. There obviously is going to be a negotiation, and I think that's the muscle memory that we need to develop, very similar to the debt ceiling negotiation we had. But it's a good starting point, and I think this is what we were elected to do. It certainly falls within our commitment to America.
All right, one last question here, and I have to ask it. Kevin McCarthy, the Speaker, you are a close ally of leadership, one of the biggest rank-and-file fundraisers. Do you continue to support McCarthy, and do you think this is an effort by the right to push him out?
Great question. I don't know if it is an effort to push him out. I certainly think that throughout our entire conference, there are going to be challenges to the status quo. That's healthy. We need that, and I appreciate the attitude of, okay, we can't do business like we've done it in the past. Let's change it up a little bit. So I appreciate that from our conference. I do support the Speaker because he had a plan. And as a strategist, and I'm sure we'll talk about this in our next conversation, but I spent 20 plus years in the military. We had a plan in any operation I was part of, and you execute that plan. I think that's what the speaker has tried to do. And nobody has really risen to that challenge with an alternative plan. So I have great relationships throughout the entire conference. I've kept in touch over the weekend with people like Byron Donalds and others who are part of the negotiation, at least part of bringing forward a plan. But there doesn't seem to be an alternative to the speaker. There doesn't seem to be an alternative plan that would suggest that anybody could do it better right now. So I think for the sake of our country, compromise is not a four-letter word. Negotiation is okay. And walking into a room and not getting everything you want is not a bad thing at the end of the day, as long as we get a first down. I use that analogy all the time. Let's get a first down. This is an opportunity to do that.
All right, well, we will see if we get a first down and we get to the 50-yard line. I think we're not quite there yet. Let's talk about what we're here to talk about today. Spectrum, 5G. You are a member of the House Energy and Commerce Committee, which has jurisdiction over these issues. I want to set the stage for everyone here. The FCC authority to auction spectrum set to expire. It expired in December, extended till March. Where do things stand there? And why is it important that it actually does get extended?
This is such an important conversation. And first, let me give credit where it's due to Kathy McMorris-Rodgers, the chairwoman of the Energy and Commerce Committee, Bob Latta, and so many others that are leading on these issues. But I view it through the national security lens. Again, spent 20 plus years in the military, flying fighter jets, using the spectrum. I'm no stranger to the military uses, to the national security, concerns. But it's not just the DoD that uses spectrum. In fact, and I say this every place I go, we don't have a military if we don't have a strong economy. And what CTIA does to push a good message of being able to use all of the spectrum and really to compete with China, that is the most important thing that we need to consider right now. The DoD and their concerns have to be taken into account. But for our economy, the 330 million Americans, I know you will hear from an expert following me on these issues, but in a conversation just previous to this, looking at the growth from 2020 to now, there is so much data going through these networks that we have to do it better. We have to do it more efficiently. We have to do it smarter. And that's why it's important. And right now, the auction authority is expired. It's going to expire. We're not able to use the spectrum in a wise manner. And I think we have to sit down with our stakeholders that include DoD, that include the commercial side, and come up with a plan to compete with China, because right now, I think they're outperforming us, and that's not acceptable.
The chair of your committee, Kathy McMorris-Rodgers, who you mentioned has been a leader on these issues, she does have a bill to get spectrum authorized. Is that the right approach, or do you think that's one approach and the reality is, to your point, you're going to have to sit down with a bunch of the different stakeholders and probably come together with one of those negotiations, a compromise package?
I think it's absolutely the right approach. And HR 3565 would authorize it and allow that spectrum to be auctioned until 2026. I mean, this is a great step in the right direction. She's done a wonderful job. This is the third bill that we've had this year alone on moving forward. And yes, we do need to get in the room, but I think it starts out of the House with the Senate. This is a bipartisan issue, by the way. And that's really the disappointing part, is we do need to move forward. We can't hold up commerce. We can't hold up technology. And really, government should set a foundation. It should be predictable. The commercial industries that use it should know what they're going to get, because we're spending billions of dollars to use this. And every single person has one of these and uses it on a daily basis for so much. That's what we have to lose if we don't pass this.
So spectrum authorization impacts 5G, the future of technology. You talk about the device in your hand. So many different industries are using this. We were talking backstage about kind of rural areas, pipelines, farming. How big of an impact does the spectrum auction have on those rural pipelines and faster internet speeds?
Let me just talk about my district really quickly. It encompasses a large portion of the Permian Basin, which is in far west Texas, the single largest oil and gas production area in the United States, and also a tremendous amount of farming. When I talk to the cotton farmers who use not only GPS, but use the networks every single day to control the pivots that are watering their fields, the fertilization of those cotton crops, and so much else is encompassed in that. And then you look at the oil and gas flow and how we're drilling and where the water is and what, where we share agriculture and energy needs. The 5G, the network that we need out there, and the fact that we don't have it in rural areas in some cases is really detrimental. And so when you look at what we need for our energy, how we feed and clothe our country, this is really important that we get it right. And so far, I think we're continuing to lag behind.
You spoke a little bit about your military background. You were a pilot. One of the key issues is this need to balance the commercial and the need for the defense and national defense. How do you approach that? What have you maybe told DOD or some of your counterparts when it comes to the military concerns?
There's a lot of usage of the spectrum in all the bands, and as a air-to-air fighter pilot, we use air intercept radars. And so you're out there, you're flying against an enemy, and domestically you're training in a way that you're using sensors from the ground, sensors from the air, but it's not all the time, and it's not everywhere. And so, yes, I understand, and I think I have credibility to say DOD, rightfully so, protects what they have because they want to be able to use these to an exclusive advantage over our competitors. And by the way, it's the same competitor we're talking about here on the DOD side. It's China. But there is, and there must be, a less parochial approach to this so that the commercial industry can also compete. And again, I'll go back to saying, without an economy, we don't have a military. If we don't have a strong economy and we're not bringing in those revenues, then the military doesn't exist. So I would like to see in this upcoming paths report that is going to be released, I want to see a realistic view from DOD, because I think there's a lack of trust right now on what they need and why they need it. And if we just have that conversation, and I think they realize that they're going to have to come to the table and work with the commercial side in order to come up with these solutions. But there is a lack of trust. That's why people like me, elected to go into Congress, are going to have that oversight and do what we can to hold them accountable, to make sure that what they're saying is not only valid, but that when you talk about the greater good, that we can actually move forward on the commercial side. And I appreciate what CTIA does, because they need help, and our networks, our carriers need help in moving the ball forward.
I want to talk more generally, zoom out a little bit. We kind of gotten very specific on spectrum, a little bit on 5G at the rural level, and the kind of the challenges with DoD. But as we kind of think about the U.S. and the U.S.'s position in the world, can you talk about how you see 5G's importance, in particular, just as like this country remaining a leader when it comes to technology?
I think it's in question right this second, and the leadership that we have exhibited over the past couple of decades has been second to none, unmatched. We go to these conferences like the World Radio Conference that's coming up in November. We have a plan. We know what's going to be used. We are, at the table, and right now we really need the administration to take some leadership and to do it in a way that benefits not just our country, but prevents the Chinese Communist Party from running the table, from doing the things that would be detrimental to our security, to our communications, to our economy, which, make no mistake, that's exactly what they want to do. And so I think that is in question. We're looking for leadership out of the White House. We're looking for them throughout the Department of Commerce to really take the mantle and establish some dominance.
And you mentioned China before. Obviously, technology in China is a very issue that a lot of members of Congress are focused on. We were talking about earlier with Meredith at CTA about just the infrastructure that China has put into kind of trying to lead on this issue for that future generation. Speak about it in terms of China and how important this is.
A couple of things. Great conversation earlier with Meredith on this, and I'm sure you guys will talk about it here in a minute, but they, through their Belt and Road Initiative, not just in China, but throughout the rest of the world, have put up all sorts of transmission and receiving devices. They've used their companies to do that, like Huawei, ZTE, and others. Very concerning because they're able to use this as kind of a diplomacy tool, if you will, with countries. Sub-Saharan Africa is a great place to start. Maybe they don't have the infrastructure. Chinese Communist Party comes in and they offer them something, and so they use that. Even here in the United States, I think we need to be very cognizant that when these devices and when these companies are used, and to me this is a complete non-starter, they shouldn't be used like Huawei, they're probably there for nefarious reasons. So that's one side on the security, and really the second issue is just it's really not acceptable for the Chinese Communist Party and the country of China to have better coverage than the country that put a man on the moon 50 plus years ago, the country that has led in every other technological way. We have to compete. So let's let government establish the foundation, give the auction authority where it needs to go, and then get out of the way and let the commercial industry do what they do best.
All right, we are quickly running out of time, but I want to end on this. We're talking a little bit about kind of the future and some of the things that you've seen either with companies or in your own district. What are you most excited about when it comes to the kind of the possibility of 5G or the possibility of some of this technology?
It's kids learning. It's the education system. We saw this in the pandemic. There were rural areas that didn't have the ability to, tune in virtually to a classroom when they needed to. And so thank goodness we're back in classrooms, but those kids, this is the future of how we learn. This is the future of how we communicate. You can control things from your phone. You can do things that we didn't think was possible. And if you believe in Moore's Law, where the technology is increasing at such a fast pace, we have to be in the game. And so we have led all the way up through 4G. Now is time to take that step and get back in the game. And I'm excited because I think that next generation, my kids, I have an 8-year-old, she knows more about technology, more about wireless devices than I will ever know. I'm at this point in time, and we need them to continue to be strong in math and engineering. And if we don't, we will fall behind, and it will have, I think, detrimental national security implications for us. So really proud of the legislation that we have. We need to pass it. We need to move forward. It is bipartisan, which is very rare today. We started off with a very partisan question, but it's rare to have that, and this one is. So it's time to get this passed and move forward.
Do you think it passes before the end of the year?
Well, hopefully before the end of December. Before the end of the fiscal year, probably not.
All right. A realistic answer. I appreciate it, Congressman. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much,
All right,
Anna.
take care.
Thank you.
All right. All right, now I'd like to welcome Meredith Atwell, CEO and President of CTIA, to join me for a fireside chat. Meredith, thank you so much. All right, we covered a lot with the Congressman, and we're going to pick up right where he left off. I want to talk about from your perspective. We just heard, from Congressman Pfluger about kind of where the legislation is when it comes to spectrum and authority. We were talking backstage, you kind of never thought it would actually expire, right? Where do things stand from your perspective?
Well, Anna, thanks for having me, and thanks for that great conversation with Congressman Pfluger. Aren't we lucky to have him in Congress and leading us? He's really great. Where are we? I have two things to say. One, I'm such an optimistic person, and this industry is doing so well. We just had our annual survey, and we grew 63% year over year last year. So the growth is incredible. The data that's going through our networks and the promise, we're just at the beginning of this 5G era, and the promise of everything that's coming is so exciting. But we are also at a critical stance where we don't have a plan for moving forward. And when we talked in February, we're like, there's no way Congress will let auction authority expire. That would be crazy. It hasn't happened in 30 years. Oh, and then it did. And we are stymied there, and we have an administration that is not showing the bold leadership that we need for a national spectrum strategy. And we need this roadmap. It's critical that we have this for going forward. And the bill in the House is a great start, and that is showing leadership, and we're really grateful for Chairwoman CMR for that. We need to see them move that, and then we need to see the Senate follow it.
So talk about licensed spectrum. I feel like sometimes I'm certainly no expert, so maybe you can explain to the layperson here who's interested in the issue but doesn't actually know what that is.
So licensed spectrum is the bedrock of the wireless community, and it allows us to have the reliable networks that we have and to make sure that they are safe and cybersecurity is kept at bay. And that's something that we need to continue. So when we say we need exclusive use licensed spectrum for the wireless industry, that's what we know works. That's the gold standard. There are other sharing models that are out there, but they're unproven. And we really believe that our next generation of networks are going to need to be safe, and we're going to need exclusive use licensed spectrum.
The Biden administration, you mentioned kind of where they are in their policy. They're currently in the process of creating the National Spectrum Strategy. What do you want to be included in that? What is that leadership that you are hoping they'll take the mantle on?
Great question. So this is such an important step. The National Spectrum Strategy should lay a roadmap out for the next decade of spectrum. So right now we're just at the beginning of the 5G decade, and we're going to be heading into the 6G decade by the end of by the end of this. But for now, we don't even know what's coming in 5G. I was in Yellowstone, and they have autonomous buses out there. That's pretty fun. They're at the Mayo Clinic as well. We're seeing all kinds of really interesting entrepreneurs. Every week we've got a new company. But to continue that growth, we're going to need more spectrum. And right now, we're not even sure. We can't even agree on what to study for next. The wireless industry is clear. The rest of the world is moving forward with the low 3 gigahertz. We want to look at 3, 4, and 7 and 8 gigahertz. That's what's going to be internationally harmonized. That's what we need to look at so that we don't create our own technological island. You guys talked about about China, and one of the things about China is that they're very clear what they want. And this summer they snapped their fingers and they gave 700 megahertz of mid-band spectrum, which is the prime spectrum for 5G, to their industry. And meanwhile, we can't decide what to study. So we really, really need the White House to show some leadership here and give all the agencies a clear roadmap for what's coming so that we can invest the $39 billion we invested last year, so that we can make sure all of those innovative companies happen here, and frankly that we're globally harmonized so that everything is at a price point where we work with other countries.
Right. Let's talk about 5G. So let's zoom out a little bit. You talked about the different, 4G, 5G, the future, potentially, 6G, where we're going. How is 5G so different than 4G?
Well, zooming back out, so 4G is really what brought us the sharing economy. And I think the rest of the world saw that happened here in the United States. We had a clear plan, and we had the spectrum auction, and the companies invested. And if you look at the entire sharing economy, Uber, Airbnb, it started here. So I think the rest of the world really wants that. So 5G we're in a race for 5G. China saw it, and that's why China's racing ahead. What does 5G bring? Well, it's 100 times faster. And it has no response time. So if you think about a car, it'll stop in an inch as opposed to a couple feet because there's no response time. Or if you think about telemedicine and remote surgery, this is what's really going to be enabled by 5G. So as I said, we're still at the beginning, but there are all kinds of companies. I'm going to Las Vegas to our convention on Saturday morning. They have a company where if I decide hey, you know what? On Sunday, I'm finished my dress rehearsal. I want to go to the Grand Canyon. You can get Halo, the app of this rental car company. They'll autonomously bring you a rental car to your hotel room. Wow. And to the hotel. And then I can go. The
room that would be very impressive.
That would be. So yes, and so you could go to the Grand Canyon for the afternoon. There's all kinds of things that are coming that are really exciting. You were talking about being from North Dakota. And so you were talking about agriculture. Representative Pfluger has young children, so he was most excited about what's happening in education. My parents were older. Health, everything that's coming to healthcare is so exciting. So you name your part of the economy, and 5G is going to change it. So I'm really excited. So
I have the optimism. I love it. I want to end here because we're quickly coming to a close. But I do want to talk about China. You've hinted at it a little bit. We were talking with the congressman about it. Talk about U.S. leadership. Like your companies are global. This is a global industry, obviously. How important is it that the U.S. maintains that leader status?
it's critical. It's critical. And we're at a point now where we're headed to this conference that Representative Pfluger mentioned, the World Radio Telecommunications Conference in November. The Americas had to move forward with a position that we had to abstain to because we here in the United States can't get our band straight. We can't sit down at the table and decide what we want. So we're allowing China to run the table, and China's choosing their own bands, and that they're convincing the rest of the world to do that. It's going to make a big difference. We have always been leaders, and we are not leading right now. And we just really need a national spectrum strategy, and we need it to be bold so that we can lead globally like we always have. Because 50 years ago, Marty Cooper walked down the streets in New York and made the first wireless call. And since then, all of these companies are American that have led. This is an American industry, and we need to continue to lead the world with it.
All right, I can think of no better thing to end this conversation on. Meredith, thank you so much for your time this morning. Really appreciate it. Thanks to all of you for joining us in person and on the live stream, and to the congressman and his team for making this conversation possible. We'll actually be back here tomorrow morning with another conversation with House Ways and Means Chairman Jason Smith. Hopefully you can join us again. Have a great day and stay safe, everybody. Thank you.